Hi y'all, I am right now in the little tiny town of Waterton, and I've just come off the Icefields Parkway. I have my Icefields Parkway shirt on, you can't see it, but I've just come off the Icefields Parkway. So I wanted to give you 5 tips on exploring the Icefields Parkway. So tip number 1, make the parkway itself your destination. So the Icefields Parkway is basically the 2-lane road that leads from Banff up to Jasper. And you've got, when you first leave Banff, you've got about 30 miles of the Trans-Canada Highway, which is their big highway in Canada. I don't know why it took me a moment to think of it, but it's about 30 miles of that, and it's 4 lanes. That's where your semi trucks are, where everything, all the business, everybody who's passing through basically are on that. It's like an interstate in the States. So it's pretty busy. Not great views, but not the best driving. But after about 30 miles, you take a right and you get on the Icefields Parkway. And it's a 2-lane road with really wide shoulders in the safe places where there should be pulling over. And I think that's important to pay attention to, because that is a big issue. You're looking for wildlife the whole way, and sometimes wildlife will be spotted on an area where there's a very narrow shoulder, which means that's a dangerous spot. Usually it's a curve or a hill where you can't see over it. So, you know, resist the temptation of pulling over there, because it's very dangerous. They have head-on collisions, I think fairly regularly, because people aren't paying attention, or people are speeding, or they come over a hill and here's a whole bunch of people in the middle of the road. So I would really encourage you to watch for those wide shoulders, but make it itself the destination. It's common to see people just passing through the parkway, and the parkway itself is where you get to see everything. So I would suggest find a base camp or a resort. There's one called The Crossings, and I didn't go online and look at the rates, but I think my local knowledge told me it was about $100 a night, but you can check on that, and it's 100 Canadian dollars. So if you're from the States, it's a good exchange rate. It's a little better, but from Canada, I'm sorry. But I think really make sure you've got a base, and so you can actually explore the 2 sides of it. I lucked out and camped in Rampart Creek, which is in the middle of nowhere. It's in the deep woods. It's probably about 30 minutes from the Icefields Center, but it's a good base because there's so much around it, but there's nothing there. So that's part of the challenge, but there's everything there. So I'll explain that in a minute. That's not very clear. But anyway, make the Icefields Parkway a destination. Don't make Jasper a destination. Don't make Banff a destination. I'm sorry, Jasper and Banff, but I'll talk about that in a separate video. But the parkway and everything off of the parkway is really where you want to go. So let me show you some pictures of the Icefields. Okay, I hope that gives you a taste of the Icefields Parkway. That's just some scenery from the road. So tip number 2 is to get local knowledge. Find somebody who is from the area or even working in the area. Sometimes it's kids working at a resort, and they're really, really helpful, and because that's why they came there, to get hiking on their time off. You can pick up all of these. You can see I'm such a nerd. This is classic me picking up stuff in the visitor centers or the different places, and this is what I do everywhere. But these are nothing compared to talking to a local. So my local source of knowledge was our campground host. His name is Lane McDougall. Yeah, actually that is his name. That is a great freaking name, y'all. And if you're a writer, pause off, because if I ever switch over to fiction, Lane McDougall's all mine. So pause off, I'll steal him back if you take that name. That is a great name. He's the campground host. And our particular campground was actually closed on the day I was supposed to arrive because there was a wolf attack. So before you freak out, that's an unusual situation. I'm going to talk about wildlife in a minute, but that's unusual. But he was waiting for the camp to open, and then there was a man and his son, and then there was me, and there was nobody else there. So we got a chance to meet then, and was wonderful. And he was so generous with his time. And he took me to all these amazing places to look for wildlife and scenery, none of which were in here. So I would have missed all of those amazing experiences had it not been for Lane McDougall and his generous gift of time. And what was really fun about that is, because it was really, I saw him every day for the whole time I was there, was wonderful, because he and his late wife he's been coming since the 70s, but he and his late wife Linda have been coming for the 25 years they were together. And so it was wonderful to be able to actually hear, as he's pointing something out, hearing the story or the backstory from his perspective around that particular site or that park bench or whatever it is. That added a layer of beauty, I think, to the experience. And you think about all the people across the centuries who were like Lane and Linda, who have stood and looked out over a river or over a creek bed or whatever it is, and had their moments and their memories and shared their love and all of those things. It was really beautiful. So I appreciate so much that he took the time to share not only his knowledge with me, but those experiences, which really made it come much more alive. So if you can, and I say this everywhere I travel in the world, everywhere you go, try and find a local to give you some pointers, whether it's a place to eat or whether it's a place to hike. There's a lot before and after these really touristed sites that are listed here, that if you see a bunch of cars pulled in to a gorgeous site, chances are very good that before that site, if you see a pullover, and the Icefields Parkway is excellent about having these pullover, either before you see that pullover or after you see that pullover, there's an equally beautiful site. But don't follow the crowd, because that's what these places do, and that's what everybody's doing. So really pay attention to what the locals tell you where they've hiked. There were some really lovely little spots that really weren't marked, that like the old Parkway Road that before it was paved, and where the explorers would go, and they'd actually bring tours up by horseback. So that was wonderful, and something I would never have seen. There's just so many of those. So seek out local knowledge, and thank you again, Lane McDougall, if you're watching, and Mr. You better be. So that's tip number 2. All of these clips that you're seeing here are pictures from either the campsite, which is Rampart Creek, and you do need to make reservations, please do, starting in January if you're going to go in the summer, or from areas right around that Lane told me about or Lane took me to, so we could see all the different things that he wanted to show me. But this is a view right here of just the campsite itself. Good morning. This is my hike from Rampart Creek, right off of the campsites. I mean, it just follows the river. And I just want you to see, this is my view, 360. Watch me fall in the river, but all the way around. Misty mountains. It's a rainy, cold morning here in Banff National Park, but Oh my goodness, look at this. And those woods back there, there's nothing there. There's no development. So you just wonder, they're so deep and so dark, you just wonder what kind of amazing wildlife lives in there. Since we have our bear and our wolf in Rampart Creek here. Look at that, 360. Isn't that amazing? Well, good morning. Okay, so tip number 3 is about wildlife. And if you want to see wildlife, you will slow down and you will see wildlife. This was an interesting one for me. I don't think I anticipated seeing as much as I saw. And again, going back to tip number 2, I would not have had I not been with Lane McDougall, because he showed me places to watch. He knew where mountain goats were. And I mean, my grandson, I think, took pictures of mountain goats in Glacier, but they were right there. They were in a very touristed area. They were right there. Actual in the wild mountain goats that aren't being fed by humans are way, way up. I mean, way up where binoculars is the only way you're going to see them, or if you have a long range camera, which I do not. But we were able to see them with binoculars, but he knew where to look, and like some nights they wouldn't be there, but we'd go watching anyway. And so that was amazing, because I would not have seen them. And if you've seen mountain goats in the wild, you just can't believe that they're hanging onto the edge of those cliffs. And according to Lane McDougall, I don't know why I don't just say Lane, but I just like the name. Their number one cause of death is falling. So it's a dangerous lifestyle, but that's how they live. That's how they stay away from predators. And so we were able to see mountain goats. We bear watched, and that was so much fun, because there's thousands and thousands and thousands of acres, but there are these berries, and I'll put a link to the berries right here. And these berries are what the bears are seeking. And because we're approaching fall, and the berries are in season right now, they're just eating berries like there's no tomorrow. So they're just eating and eating and eating. And the ones inside the campground are what's drawing them in, not the food. So they're inside the campground, which always makes obviously people nervous, and should. So the campground host's responsibility is to always report a bear sighting in the campground. Well, while I was there were bears every day, I think. So Lane is calling it in, and then we'd actually go to try and, because you see them and then they're gone. You can't find them. They just blend in so beautifully. But the park rangers that come, the bear people from the parks, actually will come when they get a call. And so we would try and keep our eye on where it was. So I'll put some pictures of the bears in here. It was really so much fun. But also, when you're watching for wildlife, do not be that stupid tourist that's going to be the front page of the paper. And I saw one, it was a cinnamon bear, and I'll show you a picture of the cinnamon bear. But we went and found it actually just off the highway, and there was cars, lined up. And we all have Zoom on our phones, y'all. Most of us use our phones, but this guy had this long-range camera. He could have gotten great pictures of that bear. Instead, he went down the little ravine. So here he is now level with the bear, with this ravine to his back, getting really close. And he's got this big-ass lens that he could have used. And so he's coming, and we're all looking at him the way we look at people like that, like, you are a moron. And he went up, and he was so proud of himself, and he was kind of, swaggering, and I'm just thinking, you are such an idiot. Don't be that person. You can see them from a distance, but this is not Disney World. These are not animatronics. This is not a zoo. These are wild animals who happen at that moment to be, eating berries. But all it takes is for you to startle them, or for it to be an adolescent and a mother bear nearby, or a scent or a sound, and that bear will do what any animal will do, and it will protect itself. And so don't be that person. It's like, come to Florida, don't feed the alligators, y'all. So keep a distance. You will see wildlife. So during this trip, I saw mountain goats. Right behind my campsite, I saw a doe and a deer, a female deer, and I walked out and there she was. And I've always heard that northern deer are a lot bigger than Florida deer. This was a very big, tall, I bet her head, standing just on all fours, I bet her head was as tall as I am. So I walked out and frightened her, and she stood staring at me. So I somehow devolved into a Disney princess and said, "Oh, little dear, don't be afraid." And I started backing up, and the minute I moved, she took off like a rocket. I scared her to death. I don't think she knows about Disney princesses, and so I don't know why I did that, but I'm glad nobody was videotaping it, because I kind of looked around thinking, oh my God, did anybody see me talking like Snow White to the little deer? So there's lots and lots of animals. We saw different birds. They have a lot of magpies up there. There's some bird I didn't get the name of. That's a very kind of scavenger kind of bird. Ravens everywhere. Oh my gosh, huge ravens everywhere. I've only seen ravens at the Tower of London. Gorgeous, gorgeous creatures. Didn't see a golden eagle. I would like to see a golden eagle, but they're up there. Did see bighorn sheep. I didn't see a moose, but Lane took me almost every night down to where he goes almost every night. Don't think that he was singling me out, y'all. He is really a good campground host. But he took me almost every night to look for moose down by this water area, because that's where you find them. So lots and lots and lots of wildlife that you'll find on the Icefields Parkway. Thought I'd show you these berries. This is what the bears are looking for and what they're eating. So that's what's drawing them into the park. It's not people or attacking people. It's these berries, and they eat 250,000 of these a day. They're called buffalo berries or soap berries because they taste like soap. Lane tasted one and told me about it, and so I tasted one, and they are freaking awful, y'all, but they're good for the bears. This is a great example of a bear picture, and whether you know you're looking at a grizzly or whether you're looking at a black bear, if the hump is bigger than the rump, it's a grizzly. So that's how I remember it. So you can see the hump isn't bigger than the rump. This is actually a cinnamon black bear, and you can see the hump isn't bigger than the rump. This is a different kind of black bear, and this cinnamon bear was right outside of Lane's camper. This is a black bear that I saw on the side of the road along with about 1,000 other tourists. There's some bighorn sheep and their kids climbing up the side of a mountain. So we're getting close to the end. Tip number 4, walk on a glacier. And it sounds very touristy, but they are disappearing, and they're disappearing everywhere. I got some comments after I put some posts on Facebook of people who were in France, and they're disappearing there. Another comment from someone who was in, I want to say Switzerland. I'm sorry, Ari, I can't remember where you were when you said that they were disappearing there as well. But they're disappearing all over the world. So politics aside, they are disappearing. So there is warming across the world, which I won't call global warming because that'll incite all kinds of comments. But anyway, the glaciers are disappearing, whether you want to believe it or not. So if you want to walk on a glacier, this is a great place to do it. I walked on the Athabasca Glacier, and there are hikes where you can actually hike up to the glacier. You have to go with a guide, and I'll show you some of the reasons why. And don't be stupid here and think you can bypass this, because there are some ravines that are carved out in the rocks, and you just fall down. They can be covered with snow or debris, and you're gone. So I'll show you some pictures of that, and it'll kind of remind you. But I took the Ice Explorer, I want to say. It's from the Icefields Discovery Center, right off of the Icefields Parkway. You can't miss it because it's probably the biggest building and parking lot that you're going to see. If you do walk on a glacier, I recommend you go early in the morning. When I got there, I think I booked 9:30. tour. They had earlier ones, and actually earlier might even be better, but the crowds were nothing. And then as the day goes on, they get more and more and more, but they bring these big ice tires. I'm sorry, you northerners, there's probably really a proper word for that, but they have big tires, and they go out and they have their ways that they impact the glacier the least, but it's really worth doing. It's just, it's stunning. It's absolutely gorgeous. I purchased the package that had 4 different experiences in it. It was the Icefields Parkway, the Glacier Walk, the Sky Walk, which I'll show you a picture of, where you can actually build this, where you can walk out on it. But there was controversy around that because I guess there were some great views before they built it, but it was kind of neat to walk out on. And then also it included the Banff gondola, which I'll do in my Banff video, and it included a cruise on Lake Minnewaca, which I'll also include on the video. Altogether, it was cheaper to buy all 4, but when I talk about in Banff, I'll tell you whether or not I think it was worth purchasing all 4. But for the Icefields Parkway, I would say at a minimum do the glacier walk on the Athabasca Glacier, because it is really worth doing. So walk on a glacier. Okay, y'all, this is the Athabasca Glacier, and it's anticipated in 2100, the year 2100, that it will be gone. That's the estimate there. It's the Columbia Icefields, which feeds this glacier, is 1,000 feet thick. I was up in Glacier, or down in Glacier, with my grandson. He flew up to spend the week with me, and all he wanted to do was see snow and touch snow. And he hasn't seen snow, he's 12, since he was 3. So, Halston, I am so sorry, but this is my view right now. I'm walking on the Athabasca Glacier up at Jasper National Park in Canada, and this is what it looks like. I am so sorry, Halston. Now, this snow that I'm walking on now is 15,000 years old. The glacier is melting. All the glaciers are melting. But this Athabasca glacier is much smaller than it was 100 years ago even. Even the workers here say that they can actually see the lake at the bottom expanding and getting larger. So all of the glaciers are melting. But I'll take some pictures and some videos so you can see what it's like to walk on a glacier. And if you get a chance to come up to Jasper, I recommend coming up and walking on the Athabasca Glacier. It's gorgeous. The mountain I'm going to show you right now is 4 times as tall as the Empire State Building, so it's hard to get a frame of reference, but it's huge. And this is Mount Andromeda. These are mill wells that opened up and actually last week, and you can see how deep they are, and they're caused by melt and rain, and they tunnel underground. And so you have to be really careful if you're hiking up here, because snow can cover those over, and the next thing you know, you're down, and they go way down. Remember, these are about 1,000 feet deep, so it could be quite dangerous. Picture I didn't get was a good picture of Mount Snowdome, which actually feeds the triple continental divide in this area. The snowmelt from Mount Snowdome flows into 3 separate oceans: the Pacific through the Columbia, the Atlantic through the Saskatchewan, and the Arctic through the Athabasca River, which is an unusual phenomenon, but it's an amazing sight to see. And finally, y'all, tip number 5. Plan a return trip. This is a massive area. We're talking hundreds of thousands of acres. And one of the things I like about Rick Steves and his travel videos and his travel guides and his books is that he always says, assume you're going to come back. Otherwise, you're going to be tempted to rush through and try and see everything. You will not see everything. This is a place that you could go to over and over and over and over again and not be exhausted by it. There's so much to see. So one of the the challenges I had is that I really didn't want to leave. It was just a magical place for so many reasons. So plan a return trip. Just think you're going to come back, and that's going to help you slow down and breathe and unplug, because you have to unplug. There is no other choice. Just slow down and enjoy it. Pack picnics, bring picnic food, and I would suggest that you do kind of stock up before you go on the Parkway with those kinds of things: picnic food, snack foods, things you can make sandwiches and take with you, because there's so many places. I'm not really a hiker in the sense of like a real hiker. Like, I have a friend, Mike Ogden, he's a hiker. Shout out to Mike if you're watching. I'm a stroller. I'll stroll, and I can go up some elevation, but I'm just not a hiker. I've never been a hiker. But I think beyond that, for those of us who even aren't hikers, there's more than you can see. And so wonderful walks and wonderful places to go and have a picnic and just sit and stare and be amazed. So plan a return trip. I'm already thinking, gosh, it'd be fun to see with some snow, and not a lot of snow, but some snow, and so the shoulder season maybe. And I don't have the right clothes, but I need to have the right clothes anyway. So this is the challenge of being a Floridian. We kind of make do, but I think there are actually winter clothes that I would need to buy. So plan a return trip. I hope this is helpful. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Give comments if you want to give comments. If they're nasty comments, I don't care. I'll just ignore you. But other than that, give me comments and suggestions. And I hope it's useful to you. Plan a trip to Banff, Jasper, and the Icefields Parkway, and you will not be sorry, I promise. And if you don't have a passport, y'all, get a passport. Get a passport. It's wonderful to have. So I'll see you in the next video.